Hokie, now, if you just woke up, you know about what happened overnight in Watertown. Yesterday, we were talking about this Saudi student that was at first a suspect, well, a person of interest, and then not a person of interest. And Steve Emerson started a bit of a kerfuffle by telling everybody that he was scheduled to be deported on Tuesday. When, of course, we putting two and two together and being the suspicious types that we are. So wait a minute. Are we trying to get another member of the Saudi family out of Dodge? Well, it appears now this guy is not related to this, but Steve is on the phone with us this morning and has done tremendous work, written a lot of books about terrorism, and we still have some real serious questions about this kid. Steve, good morning. You're on the air.
Hi. Well, just to close the loop on that one, I released last night a document on the Hannity show showing that, in fact, ICE had revoked his visa on April 16th, this past week, on national security grounds, scheduled his deportation for next Tuesday, and contrary to what Janet Napolitano said, she was under oath, so she perjured herself yesterday. And then, because I disclosed it prematurely, a deal had been cut with the Saudis not to disclose the deportation. Now, of course, they're not going to deport him, because I think they're going to charge him with violating U.S. national security of an unspecified nature. Whether he's connected to the Boston bombing, I cannot tell you. I don't have the forensic connection, so I'm not going to speculate.
Okay. So, I mean, could it be just a coincidence that someone thought he looked suspicious and then, that led to this, ultimately to this deportation?
Well, he had explosive residue on him, and they picked him up on that reason. And then he was exonerated officially, but in fact he really wasn't, because after they made the statement that he was exonerated and not of interest, within hours after the search of his apartment, ICE officials, Immigration Customs Enforcement, made an immediate decision to revoke his visa and to deport him. A voluntary deportation, meaning he wasn't going to contest it as any deportee is allowed to. It was going to be kept secret, and that explains why there was a secret meeting between the Saudi foreign minister and the president the other night. But after we disclosed it, they decided they didn't want to take the heat for deporting a Saudi who may have had blood on his hands. Well,
of course, when it comes to the subject of perjuring people perjuring themselves in this administration, it's something that's done routinely, and nobody's ever nobody is ever charged with anything. Eric Holder's a good example of that. But see, the question that I had yesterday, and that I still have today, despite whatever connections he may or may not have with the Boston bombing. Here's a guy who apparently is his family name suggests that he is very, very closely involved with a clan in Saudi Arabia that's up to their hips in Al Qaeda. How does a guy like this get into the country in the first place?
You have a liberal immigration policy. Look at these two guys. Who got these two guys who are likely from Chechnya. Okay, they came here to kill. I could give you an exclusive. The Cambridge police, not the Cambridge police, the FBI, working with the Cambridge police, found literature claiming responsibility and found pounds of extra explosives designed for a series of other attacks. And they came here to kill. That's the quote I got. Okay?
Yeah.
They were likely from Chechnya. They had a large family. Under family reunification rules, under liberal immigration policy, they didn't do any background check on them. They just allowed them in, even though they were high school students.
And so their families were here already.
Right, and it's interesting is that the families, obviously, I could only assume, we're watching television or heard about the press conference last night showing the pictures. They didn't call the police or the FBI.
Yeah.
There was happenstance that someone may have recognized one of them on the MIT campus. He was engaged by an MIT security officer who he shot at point-blank range within 2 feet and killed him immediately.
Yeah, I do think that you make a great point that no one from their family or even friends that we know of turned them in or said, hey, I recognize that guy because that's my son. I'm recognizing him. I don't care how blurry the photo is. A mother recognizes her son. And number two,
absolutely, or a cousin, or
absolutely.
Or whatever. The fact that he was protected by his family, I find offensive. But of course, it doesn't take away from the pain that the family of the slain policeman or the family of the slain 8-year-old. The victims.
My God, I can't
and these guys came in to kill. Okay, and they found literature claiming responsibility. I don't know the nature of the literature, but the literature did claim responsibility for the attack and for a series of future attacks.
All right,
and I think that the
can we
police
point out here that this is an exclusive? No one else has this information. You're telling us that they found literature claiming responsibility and they found more explosives. Where again?
In the apartment that they had surrounded, where they
in Pennsylvania, the one in Pennsylvania.
No, the one in Massachusetts,
Cambridge, right?
Okay, because there was another. Oh no, that's right. No, it wasn't Pennsylvania. I'm sorry, I stand corrected. Okay, so let me just say something, because you mentioned something that really. Well, first of all, the police seem to have perhaps let it slip in a way that because that is a direct quote. They came here to kill people. So, but the other thing is, this suspect number 2, he's only 19 years old. They have both had extensive training with firearms and explosives. You have to imagine how young this man had to have been when he was receiving the training, if he's been here a couple of years.
Well, Chechen terrorists that have been arrested before by the Russians have been as young as 16. In the Beslan massacre, there were 3 of the 27 terrorists that were below the ages of 18. In the Moscow theater terrorist attack by the Chechens, there were 3 women below the ages of 14. So they get training at a very early age, Chechen terrorists.
Imagine that.
And that explains why, look, we live in a bubble. We can't imagine a teenager getting involved in terrorism, let alone getting training. But that's the real world. That's exactly what's happening in Islamic nationalism circles.
You're right.
Oh, you said Islamic. Would it be insensitive to suggest that these are adherents to the religion of peace?
Let me just. I'm waiting to hear the admissions of failure by all those lefties who claim that anyone like Steve Emerson, who dares to suggest that these terrorists in the past 3 days might have been from the Middle East, might have been foreigners, might not have been white militia extremists, as they were pointing the finger at.
Or Tea Parties, patriots.
Let's hear them say, we were wrong.
This is such an excellent point. They did everything they could to suggest that it was the Tea Party or the anti-tax guys, and we got Slate magazine with a headline that says we better hope that the terrorists are white males. I'm just unbelievable.
But there was an article published on CNN's website that makes us, at the time, an unproven claim that pressure cooker bombers were the one that was used in the Boston Marathon terror attack are signatures of the right-wing extremists.
What?
Yeah, that was from CNN. Breitbart News had that a couple of days ago, honest to God.
What? Name for me one time a white guy set off a pressure cooker bomb.
Of course.
Well, CNN and MSNBC should register as foreign agents of Al-Qaeda, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, I've got to ask you a question, because this is really bothering. Well, there's a couple of things bothering me right now, but one of them is I thought that martyrs die with the rest of us. Weren't they supposed to die with the rest of us?
Well, that's suicide bombers, but not all of them are suicide bombers. You get a lot of bombings that take place. I mean, there are lots of attempts to do remote bombings. Yes, you do have martyrs who want to die along with it. Okay. We don't know. We don't know whether on one of the future planned attacks that seems to be a good conjecture, considering the amount of explosives they found.
Right.
Why would they have all those extra explosives, and why would they be carrying hand grenades? And doing, if they weren't planning on carrying out.
How the hell did they get hand grenades into the country?
Oh my God!
Well, no, I don't believe they got them in the country. They got them in the United States. It looks like, and it's not easy. Look, it's not difficult to get those firearms here, but most people don't use it to kill people. And if they do background checks on immigrants, they might have stopped it. They only do background checks on people who buy guns.
I want to ask you something too. You said that you made the point that they have extended family here, and none of these family members came forward. They all covered for these 2 guys. That's right. Does that suggest to you that there is a far larger cell here, and that they might be afraid to say anything because the ones we don't know about might kill them?
Or perhaps they believe they did the right thing.
Well,
I lean toward the latter, and I lean toward the latter in a way that suggests that they're not necessarily a larger cell, but there are larger communities of Islamic militants whose families know of their brethren or their children who are radical but don't report them to the police.
Yeah.
I know that for sure.
But shouldn't we, Steve, be a little more diligent? I mean, certainly this proves. I mean, this is an organized event. There could have been others. Would you agree that were involved with this?
Yes, I believe there were. Look,
I do too.
When you do a bombing like this, you have a bomb maker or two. You have people who are transporters. You have a third person who's a stakeout person who makes sure that they're not going to get caught. He's watching all around. You need 4 or 5 people to pull this off. You don't need just 2.
I was thinking the same thing. Should we now be looking a little more diligently, again, investigating, really being on cue in other major cities? Because it seems like perhaps we've let that go. I don't know. I don't know what the FBI is doing, but are we as diligent as we once were? Are we looking as closely as we once were at these possible cells in other major cities?
Well, look, there may be logic involved here, but to be honest, I don't want to speculate that there are other cells necessarily. I believe there are other Islamic militants in the United States. I know there are. I mean, we know hundreds that visited the White House. It doesn't make them all terrorists necessarily, but it creates an environment when they claim that the U.S. is engaged in a conspiracy against Islam. That's the cultural environment that induces kids like these to carry out terrorist attacks. And that's what we're dealing with in the United States. That's what Europe has been dealing with for years.
Can I go back, just circle back for a second to the Saudi student? He's going to. Is he definitely going to be deported, or shouldn't we hang on to this guy for a little while and maybe talk to him?
You're 100% right. I mean, it's outrageous that this guy was going to be deported without an extensive investigation into his contacts and everything else. Remember, he was being deported not because he overextended his visa, but purely on national security violations. That's in his in the intelligence report that was accompanied with the ICE deportation order.
Well, it looks like he's connected in Saudi Arabia with this
possibly,
this family that's this family is even related to Ayman al-Zawahiri by marriage. I mean, it's
the name. Yeah,
you talk about close. And here's what I want to know: they took a lot of stuff out of this kid's apartment. Are we ever going to know what they found?
They're going to look. First of all, it depends on if they find the second one alive or not. Some of it is going to be
No. I'm talking about the Saudi student. Remember they took
the Saudi student.
Yeah.
I don't know what they found. It's like you know what? That's a very good question. It's an excellent question. It's likely that they absolutely found evidence that he committed national security violations. Why won't they make that public? That's a great question. In fact, I'm going to raise that with the head of the Homeland Security Committee, who I'm speaking to in another hour.
Well, and this smells like 9/11, where the only planes flying were the Bin Laden family were getting them out of the country.
Right.
We don't prosecute our Saudis; we deport them.
Yeah, because they got $200 billion in T-bills. They export oil, and they're powerful, and we don't want to alienate them, even though they violate our laws. And I might say, ironically, this comes after 3 weeks after we disclosed, my organization, the Investigative Project on Terrorism, that the United States was entering into a secret agreement with Saudi Arabia to expedite visas for Saudi nationals. And the expedition was going to be based on the fact that Saudi Arabia was going to do the intelligence background on the applicants for the visas. For the first time, the U.S. was surrendering sovereignty over visa intelligence for those who enter the United States. This is from a country that 15 of the 19 hijackers came from.
Well, we have no national sovereignty on our borders or anywhere else anymore, Steve. We got to go because we're right up against a break here.
Thank you.
But Steve Emerson,
keep up the good work.
Yeah, Investigative Project on Terrorism. He's also written for New Republic, right?
Years ago. But,
okay.
But you bring up classified information, so we'll leave that alone.
All right. Thank you, Steve, so much for joining us. Keep up the good work.